It's like,
Kendi, what page are you streaming to?
Listen Media USA page.
Listen Media USA, this one?
Yeah.
You didn't start it.
You want me to start now?
Okay, start. I need to get my back. You need to get your live stream started.
It's started now. This one.
No, it's not.
This is, you just started. We started.
I'm sorry. Can we lift this up? No,
he's fine.
that's where it is, that works, okay,
He'll hear you.
okay.
This microphone works for the room too if you want it.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Turn it on the bottom.
I'm Monique Cullors-Doty. I am the aunt of Marcus Golden. I'm also the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Minnesota and Black Lives Matter Twin Cities Metro, and a founding member of Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar. Thank you for coming out. I will be emceeing along with Michelle Gross, the president of Communities United Against Police Brutality. And I really want to make sure that she gets the proper introduction, because we would not be here without Michelle. I'm so thankful for you. Tears of joy. I don't cry. I don't cry. Tears of joy. I am so happy. We wouldn't be out here without you, Michelle. We literally would not. And you deserve that recognition. At the 11th hour, we filed the lawsuit. Michelle wrote it, and I filed it pro se. We did not have a lawyer. And it was just so beautiful how everything worked out. We just threw a Hail Mary pass, and Paul Bossman, the amazing attorney, caught it. So I'm going to turn this over to Michelle.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sweetheart. Welcome, everyone. We are here to talk today about an amazing success by the community in the case of Marcus Golden, and I'm extremely proud to be standing here talking to you about this. What has happened is that, as Monique pointed out, they didn't even have a lawyer. And in fact, we had missed the 3-year statute of limitations for state wrongful death. And 2 days before the 6-year statute of limitations on all federal claims, we were able to successfully file a lawsuit. The family filed it pro se, no assistance from an attorney, and yet we had attorneys pick up this case and advance it in some exceedingly important ways. And this victory is 100% the result of efforts by the community. 100%. And in the community, I include our attorneys, of course. But this is a victory 100% by the community. And the reason that that's important is this. It is clear that this system is not capable of self-regulation. It is clear that this system will not hold its players accountable. It is clear that it is the community who must step up, figure out ways to hold the systems accountable and its players within it. And so this is what the community has done. It's taken us 8 years, over 8 years to do this, but we did it. And that's why I'm exceedingly proud to be talking about this today. So the way that this whole thing went down is we were successful in filing a lawsuit. We were successful in getting Paul Bosman and then Kevin O'Connor to take this case over, because as much as we could do on our own, we still needed some help from some lawyers. But even without lawyers, we were able to get Monique named the special administrator and the trustee for this case, and that's how she was able to go forward. But then we had lawyers step up and help and take over, but also we had people in the streets demanding justice. This was not going to ever happen if we did not have people in the street demanding justice. And that's the reality, and that's what every single one of these cases needs, is people demanding justice. Because again, the system will not self-regulate, it will not hold its own people accountable, and that's what we know. Then, once the case started moving through the court system, our Reinvestigation Workgroup, our reinvestigation team, took over this case and did a much more thorough investigation on the case than what St. Paul Police Department did on their own. And because of what we in our reinvestigation workgroup were able to discern and decide and come out of, and you're going to get a whole presentation on this, what they were able to come out with is exactly why this case got to the finish line, because they were able to reveal the truth from lies. And this is very, very important. And one of the things that I want to mention is, and remind people of is this. Police have a stake when they do something wrong in making sure that people don't figure it out. They have a big stake in it. And they rely oftentimes on media to tell their narrative. And if you'll recall, but for the videotape by Darnella Frazier, the Minneapolis police were saying that George Floyd died from a medical incident. Now we know that that's not true, but that's the first thing that came from them. And there's an ongoing pattern of the way that these cases go down. Police do something bad, then they lie about what happened, and then not only that, but they gild the lily by vilifying that person, by claiming they have a bad history or things like that. I remember one of the cases, Isaac Aiden, where they said he had a long history of run-ins with the police. Everything he had on his record was either a parking or driving violation. That does not spell long run-ins with the police. So this is the kind of vilification that we see every single time in these incidents. They find, they manufacture circumstances that justify what they did, and then they gild the lily by vilifying that person and making a person not sympathetic to the public so people don't care. And this is what we are here to break that narrative. And so we appreciate you all being here very, very much to help in our, I would call it a celebration, and it is a celebration. It's a victory for the people. At the same time, it's somber because a man died. So I'm very proud to be able to be here and talk about this. And with that, I would like to introduce to you the two attorneys who helped bring this home, Paul Bosman and Kevin O'Connor. Thank you.
After you go. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin O'Connor, O''CONNOR from the O'Connor Law Firm. I come from Chicago. I come a long way to come up here to help you guys up in this city. When Paul first contacted me and talked to me about this case, I looked at the police reports. I said, show me the police reports. I looked at the police reports. I said, it doesn't look like a very good case when you look at what the police wrote. But I looked at a few things that didn't seem right. There was just a few things a little off. When they talked about on the night of the occurrence, he didn't have any gun, he didn't have any weapon, but then they said they magically found one on the front seat of the floor the next day but it was on top of the glass. I said, well, that doesn't add up. Then Paul told me about this wonderful group that Michelle leads in this group, and he said, well, wait a minute, don't run away yet. There's this Communities Against Police Brutality that's been established up here, and they did their own investigation. I said, okay, let me take a look at that. And it was miraculous, the amount of work and the amount of effort they put into this case to show what really happened and to show that the reports that were given by these police officers were completely inaccurate, and you're going to get to see how that happened in this case. So what went forward? You're going to hear from Paul about him coming up with his novel legal theory that worked. He brought this case based on murder. I looked at him and said, good luck. As a lawyer, I've not heard about this going across. I do these cases across the country. I've never seen one go forward under a murder exception to get out around the statute of limitations. Call me if you win that motion. I'm really not interested. A couple months later, I get a call from Paul. Guess what? I beat it. I won it. And so he'll explain to you how he did that. And I said, well, I'm a man of my word. You beat it. I'm going to come back in. Not easy to prove murder against police officers. That's not something that you're going to want to be able to do because the community doesn't want to believe that their police officers are murdering people. They want to believe it's an accident. They want to believe it's bad training. They do not want to believe it's murder. So we went forward and we prosecuted this case under murder, the murder exception. These officers were brought before a grand jury, and there was a no bill done, so they didn't file. But that's all dependent on the prosecutors and what evidence they present. And you're going to see the evidence that's presented here, and if you were on that grand jury, I think you would have indicted. But that's not what happened in this particular case. So why is this happening in St. Paul? This is not my only case now in St. Paul, and I'm learning, whoa, they got a problem here. You got a problem with police not reporting things accurately, covering things up. You've got the county that has a medical examiner that's falsifying records and documents to get people held in jail with wrongful convictions. There's a real problem going on in this community that needs to be solved, and it really needs to be worked on. So what happened in this case? We've come to a settlement in this case with the city, and it's important because it's not just the monetary amount that they are paying, the 1.3 million, but it's the other aspects that they agreed to do to help give some relief to this family. The mayor agreed to put out a statement that I think everyone has seen to talk about that there were problems in this city and that they need to be corrected. They agreed to have a committee created, appoint a family member to the St. Paul Community Area Safety Council to help bring about reforms, so one of the family members of Marcus, so that there can be some real reform, and to give him a bench and a plaque that's out on, one of your prominent parks, because he needs to be remembered, and this just shouldn't be swept under the rug, which is one of the most important things. I can tell you I've reached out to the mayor, Mayor Carter, as I've done in every case in every county and every community I've been in across the country. When the case is over, they hope I go away, and I say, no, I don't go away. I'm willing to volunteer my time back to the community to try and help with police reforms. I've done it in other communities where they've really made progress. He wasn't available today, unfortunately, but I told him I'll be back next week, so on another case, so I'm more than willing to meet with him at that time, and I hope he takes me up on it, and I hope the community holds him to the fire and makes him take me up on that, because I'm willing to donate my time to help make those changes. I heard an interesting history about St. Paul, because I was asking questions. How did you get the name St. Paul? How did it become a religious name in here? And interesting enough, I learned that the original name was Pig's Eye. I guess you guys know that. I don't know that. And that's a weird name given the police situation we've got going on here. And so what ended up happening is the priest came in and said, no, we're not going to keep a name like that. We're going to make it St. Paul. But who was St. Paul? St. Paul used to persecute Christians. He was part of the Pharisees. And he was on his way to Damascus. A bright light came in his eye. He was blinded, and he converted and saw the light, right? My thing to St. Paul, my thing to the mayor, my thing to this police department, it's time to see the light. It's time to be blinded. Take the name of St. Paul seriously, follow in his footsteps, and turn this community back into a safe, an honorable community, one that has mutual respect between the police department and the community to prevent this from happening again. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Sure, feel free. Hello, my name's Paul Bossman. After the Golden family filed their own lawsuit, the judge gave them 3 months to find an attorney. I'm that attorney. Shortly after getting on board, I filed a motion to amend the complaint to file a claim for wrongful death under the murder exception. I think I named it. Normally, you have 3 years to file a wrongful death claim in Minnesota, except there's an exception in the statute that I only find that had been used 3 times for a death caused by an intentional act constituting murder. We moved the court, it's never been done in 40 years that the thing had been law. Lots of lawyers said it wouldn't work. Fortunately, the judge in this case disagreed with those lawyers and allowed us to include wrongful death in the complaint, but warned we were going to have to prove murder in civil court. And I saw that as a challenge, because we'd finally get to try police officers for murder. Now, without reviewing all the evidence, because that's coming up, a quick review for people who are unfamiliar with the case. Marcus was parked on the west end of a long, skinny parking lot, when he was approached from the east by police officers who parked in front of him. When the first supervisor showed up at the scene and asked what happened, they said, well, public safety statement, we fired in an easterly direction. That could not happen unless they were firing Marcus after he left. Lots more evidence where that came from, but Marcus was shot in the back of the head and it exited through his eye. Marcus was killed as he left the scene intentionally by the officers without justification, and that is murder. So you may be thinking, why didn't we try the police for murder in civil court? Why did we settle? Well, there are lots of reasons, and ultimately that's not my decision. But the reason that stuck in my mind was told to me by a wise old lawyer who said, he said that the jury never wants to find the police guilty of murder. They want to find that it's an accident. They want to find the officer's training was inadequate. Anything but not murder. And that's stuck in my mind like something stuck in my teeth. I kept going back to it. I have no reason to doubt that wise old lawyer's judgment, but as a lawyer myself, that makes no sense. I mean, we gather the facts. We look at the law. We apply the law to the facts. That's how we find that this is murder. That thing about my opinion, they beat that out of me the first year in law school. The law says this was murder. But at about 2:15 in the morning on January 14th, 8 years to the minute after Peck and Doverspike murdered Marcus Golden, my phone beeped at me. It signaled the delivery of a text message that my two 20-something daughters, including these two, had arrived safely after attending a concert and a party at friends, and I woke the next morning to that message. Marcus's mother didn't get that message. She had police officers come to the bank where she worked, tell her that her son was dead, and because she was distraught, deliver her to a psych ward. Marcus's grandparents had 2 officers arrive at their home, tell them that Marcus was dead, but refused to tell them how until officers arrived with a search warrant to search their home. And they weren't there to search for evidence of what Doverspike and Peck did, but for something of Marcus's to justify their crime. Later that day, Paul Paulus of the St. Paul Police Department held a press conference saying that Marcus had a gun, that Marcus drove his truck directly at the officers, slandering Marcus's memory within a day. After St. Paul Police investigated St. Paul Police officers, a grand jury refused to indict Doverspike and Peck. And there's a saying among lawyers that a competent county attorney could indict a ham sandwich. That's because the county attorney controls everything that the grand jury hears. But in this case, they couldn't indict Doverspike and Peck. So for months and years, St. Paul failed to explain what happened in that snowy parking lot. The family grieved. The family tried to discover what happened. They argued over what to do. They didn't move forward with the lawsuit for all the reasons that a black family with ties to law enforcement wouldn't fight City Hall, until they did. And that's when I understood why the jury doesn't want to find the police guilty. Because if instead of waking to a text message that says all's right with the world, we could wake to death, rejection, grief, anger for years, all would not be right in our world. We the jury, we the people, we don't want to think that the police could murder our sons or my daughters. And the police tell us that it was a young black man with a gun trying to harm police officers. They lie to us, and we believe them, and we sleep through the night. The truth is that the burden of holding the police accountable is not the burden of Marcus's family alone. We the people empower the police to keep the peace. We the people empower the police to shoot and kill us when it's necessary to protect us. We the people must remain watchful through the night for police misconduct. We, this group here, we watch the watchmen, and we will, if necessary, try them for murder when the county attorney won't. Justice for all stolen lives. Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you again to attorneys Paul Bosman and Kevin O'Connor for an outstanding job taking on a very, very difficult case and bringing it to an excellent resolution. And so this is really important. These battles are fought in the legal arena, but they're also fought in the political arena. But we have to have the facts to fight them. And so I want to introduce to you now the members of the Reinvestigation Workgroup of Communities United Against Police Brutality, who did the work for many, many months to gather the evidence to show the truth. And that's what they're going to do today. They're going to show you the truth. And with that, so I'd like to introduce Nicole and Maddie and Emma. Come on up.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. So like Michelle said, thank you all for being here. My name is Emma Peterson. My last name is spelled P-E-D, as in David, E-R-S-O-N. This is my older sister, Maddie, and my godmother, Nicole. And we, along with many other volunteers, make up the Reinvestigation Workgroup. Alrighty. So the Reinvestigation Workgroup was formed to review police deadly force cases. And we know that for every police killing, there is a conventional narrative that is spread by the police, the county attorney, and the media to avoid holding law enforcement officers accountable. Our Reinvestigation Workgroup reviews all of the available evidence to find disparities in that narrative, and we disseminate the authentic narrative to the families, most importantly, to their attorneys, to the media, and the community. So almost 2 years ago, we began to reinvestigate the killing of Marcus Golden alongside members of Marcus's family. We relied on a 594-page St. Paul Police Department investigative report. This report included officer and witness interviews, call transcripts, computer-aided dispatch or CAD notes, and more. There was no body cam video or squad video of the actual incident. There was a surveillance video from the apartment lobby, but it did not capture footage of the incident. We also data requested crime scene photos, audio, and video, including other squad camera footage and interviews from the Washington County Attorney's Office. And then we obtained supplemental video footage, news articles, other pieces of data, and worked and collaborated with Marcus Golden's family and friends to gather more information. So our first finding, number one, about the 911 call that was made that night. The police narrative is that a man called 911 to report that a guy had been texting him death threats from a texting app, and that the guy had a gun and was driving in and out of the apartment parking lot of his apartment. What the evidence shows is that a man called in a harassment complaint on Marcus. That caller was safely locked inside of his apartment building. He was not in fear for his life. He told the dispatcher that he just wanted Marcus off his property. And we also know that the 911 caller did not see Marcus with a gun. He just knew Marcus owned one. The male 911 caller and Marcus had known each other for a while because they had dated the same woman. All three, Marcus, the 911 caller, and the woman, continued to engage in messaging each other. And based on that fact, it seems that there was a lot more going on than the police narrative that was presented. So, St. Paul Police Department claimed that Marcus sent the 911 caller death threats and threatening messages, but Dover, Spike, and Peck, the officers, never talked to the 911 caller when they arrived to confirm the existence of said messages. And the St. Paul Police Department has been unable to produce any evidence of said messages. This is not the first time that Marcus was falsely accused of making threats against this woman. About a month earlier, a similar 911 call was made about Marcus, and the St. Paul Police Department investigator declined that case due to lack of evidence. He said that he reviewed the text messages from Marcus to this woman, found no direct threats to her, but did see frustration in his text that she was not responding to him. The investigator contacted the woman and found that she was playing him and felt that it was her fault for the damage, and she did not want to pursue any charges against Marcus at that time. After this incident, Marcus legally purchased a firearm, and on December 8th, the month before, the FBI Background Center contacted this Sergeant Ken Jensen, about the permit, and he said that with Marcus's history, he was still eligible to purchase a firearm. So you may be wondering, why was Marcus there that night? Marcus was trying to return items to this woman who stayed at the 911 caller's apartment, and he had been trying to return her things for a while. And we found from the crime scene photos that evidence with her name on them were found in Marcus's car. So finding number 2, the dispatch. So St. Paul Police Department claims that officers Dover, Spike, and Peck were responding to this 911 call. We know that 2 other squads were actually assigned to this call by the dispatcher, not including officers Dover, Spike, and Peck. We do know that the officers responded to the call without notifying their dispatch, that they arrived at the scene without activating their overhead lights and sirens. And when you don't activate your overhead lights, you don't trip on your in-car camera conveniently. They also failed to speak first with the 911 caller and investigate whether a crime had actually been committed. Every single aspect of Officer Doverspike and Peck's response to the 911 call was a violation of departmental policy, as well as a violation of the core law enforcement principle of officer safety. Here are those policies for your reference. Officers Doverspike and Peck approached Marcus's car without waiting for the two squads that were actually assigned to the call. And once again, they arrived without turning on their overhead lights or camera. These are huge officer safety concerns. Finding number 3, the computer-aided dispatch comments. So a CAD is the officer's squad computer. They can send messages back and forth to each other from it. We know that 2 Tango squads or training cards were dispatched to this call, and someone in squad 223T aired over the radio that Marcus had previously threatened to kill police officers. They said that Golden has been known to be a violent person and has made threats against St. Paul police officers that he would kill them in the past. These alleged threats Marcus made were the same incident as the one a month earlier, where the St. Paul Police Department investigator declined the case due to lack of evidence. After St. Paul police had arrested Marcus and took him to the jail, Marcus told his family that those officers had beat him. He was concerned that he had a concussion, and he spoke to family members about hiring an attorney. So what happened when the officers arrived? The police claimed the officers drove to the back of the parking lot, they got out of their cars, and they claimed to speak to Marcus. The officers claimed to have a 20-second back and forth conversation with Marcus, who had his window rolled down before he accelerated at the officers. Marcus's driver's side window was actually rolled up, and there was not enough time for them to have a back and forth conversation with Marcus. We know that because 8 seconds elapsed between the officers aired the license plate on Marcus's car and when they announced shots fired. We also know, as you can see in this picture, that Marcus's driver's side window was not open because there's still glass on his driver's side window at the top. All right, so now the shooting. St. Paul Police Department claimed in a press release that upon arrival, officers located the suspect sitting in the driver's seat of an SUV that was parked facing the squad car. Officers exited their vehicle, and before they could fully approach the suspect, he accelerated the SUV and drove at a high rate of speed directly at one of the officers. Marcus was leaving the parking lot. He did not drive at officers. If anything, he drove around them. As you can see, his actual tire tracks out of the parking lot are in red, and the blue path is an optional path he could have taken if he wanted to harm officers that day. We also know that directly across from where Marcus left his parking spot, there's a very steep hill, as you can see from this photo here. Marcus had been to this parking lot before. He drove as close as possible to the steep hill, putting himself in harm's way in order to drive around the officers. As Marcus was leaving, Doverspike ran actually after the vehicle, as evidenced by his footprints and Marcus's tire tracks in the snow here. So once again, the police claimed that Marcus accelerated at a high rate of speed and drove directly at one of the officers. What we found and what the evidence shows is that Marcus drove away, driving as close as possible to a steep hill to avoid hitting the people in the approaching car. Now the casings. So cartridge casings, or casings that expel from a gun after it is fired, don't lie. They tell you the approximate location of a shooter. And Doverspike and Peck's cartridge casings tell the whole story of this case. Officer Doverspike claims that he fired 2 rounds at Marcus after Marcus's car allegedly hit his gun. The green zones here represent the location of where Officer Doverspike claims he fired. His description suggests that he fired to the southwest. The red circle shows where Doverspike's casings actually landed, next to the red fire hydrant here. Based on the casings, the bullet holes in the car, and the officer's public safety statements, Doverspike fired in an easterly direction. As you can see here, in red are highlighted Doverspike's footprints as he chased after Marcus's car as he was driving away in the parking lot. And in green here, you can see that Officer Doverspike actually slipped and fell adjacent to that fire hydrant. Again, here you will see in the green highlight on the ground, that's where Doverspike fell. And in the top right corner, number 23 and 24, next to that red fire hydrant, are Officer Doverspike's cartridge casings. So what did Officer Peck claim? Peck has a very different narrative. Officer Peck claims that Marcus drove straight at his partner. Seeing this, Peck turns and runs back to the squad car because he thought that they were going to chase Marcus in the car. And then once he gets to his passenger side door, Peck looked back to see his partner almost be sucked under the vehicle. Those are his words. He claimed Marcus's car hit something and then heard a gunshot and glass breaking. Then Peck says he fired several rounds at Marcus's driver's side window. What does the evidence show? Even though he claims to have seen Marcus drive directly at his partner, Officer Peck does not fear for his partner's life, and he doesn't use deadly force at that moment. He runs to his squad car. When Peck ran to the squad car to chase Marcus, he wouldn't have seen what his partner was doing in these moments. And contrary to Peck's statements in the evidence, Doverspike actually claims that he fired first, and then Marcus hit the fire hydrant. The exact opposite of how Officer Peck describes it. We know that Marcus was shot twice, once in the left arm and the other in the left back of his head next to his ear. The bullet traveled at a downward angle left to right and exited his right eye. Marcus was shot from behind. And because Marcus was shot in the back of the head, we know that he was still alive when he corrected the car to avoid hitting the vehicle. This is an aerial photo of Marcus's complete tire tracks, and you will see that Marcus corrects the car to avoid running into the apartment building. He must have been alive still at that point. So that means that he was shot later. And you'll see in the red zone on the bottom, the tire tracks go from a dark to a light tread, meaning that Marcus was no longer pressing on the accelerator, and he must have been shot in the head at this moment. Doverspike was up in the corner here, circled in green when he fired. Officer Peck was standing here circled in red when he fired. So how was Marcus a threat to Officers Doverspike and Peck in that moment? He was more than 80 feet away from them, driving away at the moment that they used deadly force. Responding officers Sweeney and Doverspike pulled Marcus out of the vehicle by his feet and rendered aid. Marcus was still breathing. And even though Marcus was across the street from Regents Hospital, Marcus died on the scene. And now the gun, the infamous gun. St. Paul Police Department claims a loaded handgun was found in Marcus's immediate reach. Marcus did not fire at the officers, even though Officer Peck claimed to have heard a gunshot that wasn't from his partner. And according to the autopsy, Marcus's hands were bagged and there was no soot, gunpowder, stippling, or unburned gunpowder flakes noted on either hand that would indicate that he had fired a gun that night. As we know in this case, St. Paul Police Department investigated themselves for wrongdoing. St. Paul homicide investigators Sergeants Cheshire and Donahue arrived on the scene between 2:45 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. to investigate the shooting. Sergeant Donahue did a scene walkthrough around 2:44 a.m. and he wrote, "When looking into the apartment from the driver's side window, I observed a large amount of what appeared to be blood and glass. The front compartment also contained numerous other personnel items strewn about. I observed what appeared to be the butt end of a gun or taser on the passenger side floor. It appeared to be black in color." Donahue left and then returned the scene around 9:14 a.m. He wrote, "Only approximately the last inch of the butt was exposed. The rest was covered with numerous personal property thrown about. The vehicle appeared to be that of a hoarder. That is how much stuff was thrown about in the inside of the vehicle." Sergeant Cheshire, the other investigator, returned with Donahue around 9:14 a.m. He claims he viewed the vehicle in the daylight and allegedly observed the butt, magazine, well area of a black handgun that was under some loose papers on the passenger side of the floor. Now, interestingly enough, There are no crime scene photos to corroborate the written testimony of Sergeants Donahue and Cheshire about the gun. There was only one crime scene photo of the gun taken, located inside the vehicle. And despite the interior of the car being described as that of a hoarder's, the gun appeared on top of all the debris and broken window glass. Why is the gun visible in this crime scene photo and not underneath paper and debris as the sergeants described? And if the gun was in the car when the windows were shot out of Marcus's car, why is there broken glass underneath the gun? Marcus suffered a head wound and was draped over the passenger seat. Additionally, blood was found on Marcus's hands. So why is there no blood spatter on top of that gun? Marcus was killed at 2:20 a.m. and homicide investigators were on scene at 2:44, and that loaded handgun was not recovered from the car that St. Paul police had in their possession until 12:50 p.m., about 11 hours later. So what took them so long? We know that despite the vehicle being involved in an active crime scene, investigators requested a search warrant for the vehicle, as well as for Marcus's grandparents' home, looking for firearms. The search warrant was signed by a judge at 9:56 a.m. Sergeant Cheshire also called Marcus's father, asking where Marcus's firearms were. Why? Homicide investigator Sergeant Sheila Lambie wrote the search warrant for the car in the grandparents' house. Sheila executed the warrant on Marcus's grandparents' home first. Sergeant Lambie did not include in her application for the search warrant that the Sergeants Cheshire and Donahue saw the butt end of a handgun in Marcus's car. Why not? Around 10 a.m., Sheila gives a search warrant for the vehicle to Officer Lindquist with the crime scene unit, and that officer never left the crime scene, and the car does not get searched until 12:50 p.m. Sheila then drives to Marcus's grandparents' house to search their house and completes her search of the Golden home at 11:52 a.m. The officers in control of Marcus's car, the GMC Jimmy, had a search warrant for the car around 10 a.m., but they didn't start their search until 12:50 p.m. They found the gun at this exact time, and it was the only thing that they looked for in that vehicle. St. Paul police waited 1 hour and 43 minutes to search the vehicle, even though they had a search warrant. And why did they wait to start their search until after Sheila Lambie finished the search of the grandparents' home? Now, we have to talk about the aftermath, because in almost every one of these cases, there's a pattern of mistreatment of the family and friends of people killed by the police. This is Marcus's vehicle. This is what they did to his vehicle. And according to the family, the city of St. Paul attempted to auction this car without notifying them in March of 2019. Or sorry, not in March, but in 2019. I think it was May. Again, look at the damage to Marcus's car. This was the side that hit the fire hydrant. Marcus drove at that fire hydrant to avoid going around those officers. Look at the bullet holes in the back of the car. Those 2 yellow rods indicate 2 of the bullets from the officers. They fired 7 in total. And you can see the other broken glass out of the window. So immediately after, St. Paul Police Department Public Information Officer Paul Paulos made statements in the immediate aftermath of the shooting that began the vilification of Marcus Golden. And in his press conference, Paul Paulos claimed that it was a female 911 caller and confirmed it was a female after a reporter asked for clarification. He claimed Marcus drove directly at one of the officers at a high rate of speed and that those officers were in a marked squad car with lights. We know that it was a male 911 caller, and making it sound like it was a female only is an attempt to make it sound like a domestic incident because the public are more sympathetic to that. Marcus did not drive at the officers, and the officers never activated their overhead lights. St. Paul Police Department then released a staged photo of Marcus's bedroom at his grandparents' home to NPR News. This was taken during the search of the grandparents' house on the day that he was killed. So Marcus helped his grandparents out, but he was no longer living at their home at the time he was killed. The St. Paul Police Department investigators staged photos and a t-shirt with the face of Marcus's late brother, who had committed suicide 6 months before Marcus was killed. And NPR Radio News was complicit in circulating a false narrative that Marcus had built a shrine to his late brother and was potentially trying to commit suicide by cop, even though there is no evidence to back this up in any of the investigative reports. Marcus was treated like the suspect of his own murder investigation by the St. Paul Police Department, the Washington County Attorney's Office, and the local media. These are some of the headlines that were posted about St. Paul Police Department in the shooting of Marcus Golden. To the media organizations, many of whom are here today, who contributed to the dehumanization and vilification of Marcus Golden based on the police narrative, do better.
Say that. Say that.
And while St. Paul Police Department and local media spread lies about Marcus, this was the community's response to his loss. It's not going to play. Oh, there it is. So in conclusion, we want to say thank you to everybody who marched, sang, prayed, posted, fought, and litigated for justice for Marcus Golden. We will see you all again in the streets. We will be posting videos that we made with this whole story on our CUAPB YouTube, probably after today's press conference or tomorrow at the latest. All of this work is done again by Communities United Against Police Brutality in our Reinvestigation Workgroup. We are a local nonprofit community organization. We're all volunteers except for our one attorney, Paul Wassman. We have two funds that you can donate at, the General CUAPB Fund and then the Stolen Lives Justice Fund. And that Stolen Lives Justice Fund is what made a lot of this work and other work for families of stolen lives possible. The money that we get in that fund goes to families in their cases. It goes to autopsies, independent autopsies, hiring expert witnesses, court filing fees, and the other insurmountable costs upon families who lose someone to the police. Any questions?
So we will have a time for question and answers in just a minute. Before we proceed though, Monique Kohler-Doty, the aunt of Marcus Golden, would like to say a few more words. And I do want to just mention again that this was a community effort. The Reinvestigation Workgroup, all volunteers. The Stolen Lives Justice Fund, the monies raised by volunteers used to pay for independent autopsies, used to pay for investigators and other expenses needed, filing fees and all of that needed by these families, because these families cannot get justice on their own. We do this so that these families can get justice. And so please get involved in this work, please support this work. And now, Monique Kohler-Doty.
Thank you for that. I do want to make a few points of clarification with the reinvestigation group citing information from the 911 call. I want to be very clear when I tell you that is not the original 911 call. That call is now 46 seconds long, so it's 46 seconds from the time the call was made to when Marcus was shot. That is not the original caller, did not say Marcus was sending threatening messages. He did not say Marcus had a gun or was known to have a gun. The 911 operator kept asking, does Marcus have a gun? Well, if he had a gun, where would it be? Would it be, I don't even know if she said the name Marcus, where would it be? Would it be in the glove compartment? Would he have it on the passenger seat? Where would it be? And he's like, I don't know. So when we did ask for the 911 operator's name and training, we found out that she got an order of protection. So something's wrong. Why would the 911 operator need an order of protection? Additionally, when the reinvestigation team went to the site at the same time of year, same time of night, same lighting with the moon, there was a squad there, someone to intimidate them. But they said they didn't realize that it was the police at first because of the low profile and the lights. They did not realize that it was the police. And so an eyewitness had reported Marcus didn't even know it was the police. He had told us that one of the officers slipped about the shooting. So I wanted to be very clear that Marcus was not sending threatening messages. The app that St. Paul lied and said he was using, of which they have the app itself sent documentation. They have no record of Marcus's number. What is the name of that app? I forgot. Glide. So I did some research on Glide because Glide uses videos and that takes up a lot of space on your phone. All video messages are saved to the cloud, even disappearing messages. So that is another lie of the St. Paul Police Department. And Marcus was there late to return Emily, a woman named Emily, her clothes because she was leaving and she was going away for a while. She was going into treatment. He was trying to return her items. We do have some video from the lobby. We can see that Marcus was not driving back and forth in and out the parking lot. That is a lie. One officer says they talked with Marcus on the passenger side. There are no footprints on the passenger side where Marcus's car was in the fresh snow. Also the staged room. I was at my parents' house when that happened with Sheila Lambie and the other officers. And they blocked the hallway. They would not let me see what they were doing. Those t-shirts that had, and pictures that had his brother's photos and things on, I had actually gave him some extra stuff that we had, and I asked him to store them in his closet. And he's, of course, anything I asked Marcus to do, he did. He stored them in his room. And because Marcus's mother had been a reserve officer with the St. Paul Police Department for 22 years when they killed her son, 22 years of service, getting awards for volunteering 400 hours plus, and they did this to her son, then tried to act like she needed to be on a psych ward so they could put her away for 72 hours while they continued their cover-up, because the St. Paul Police Department in the middle of the night called the NAACP St. Paul president, who's a family friend, who knows Marcus, who said, "Y'all killed Marcus?" And then they knew it was an issue. They knew it was going to be an issue. That photo was not only in NPR where they staged his room, it was on the front page of the St. Paul Pioneer Press with a bunch of lies. It went on for the front page and onto the back page. And I'm going to say they continue with their anti-black reporting and racist reporting, where they targeted a former girlfriend of Marcus's with lies, and because she is Asian, they put in lies using broken English, where they said, "Oh, Marcus is going to pop my head. She called me, she was upset, she was distraught." She's like, what does that even mean? Because it never happened. The poor girl changed her name. It was so bad, the way they talked about Marcus, because they did not want the community to support him and respond, but this community knew better. And I'm so thankful for that. So this is not over. There's much more. There's a lot more to this. But I want you to know Marcus did not send threatening text messages. Actually, the girl Emily had another friend who had been threatening Marcus. I was with Marcus when he got the first call. When I was at the house and Sheila Lambie came with the list of the items, she said, "We have an empty gun box." I said, "Oh, you're setting them up." Knew right then. The way they covered up Marcus's murder could not have been the first. This is not some tricks that you just pull out of a hat. every single St. Paul police homicide needs to be reinvestigated by an independent body.
Yes, yes.
And I also want to clarify, I expect accurate reporting about my nephew and what happened. The articles in the St. Paul Pioneer Press that have been out regarding this in the past few days, using and reporting the grand jury report that was done by Washington County, Pete Orput, who at his home when we were protesting said he had all of the text messages. He said, we wrote to the Middle East, we got all the text messages. There are no text messages. Next, time to open that grand jury reports. It was done with Breonna Taylor. We need to do it for Marcus Golden. We do it for Marcus Golden. We need to do it for Jafford Smith
Yes.
because he also had that case. So I just wanted to clarify those things, and I expect accurate reporting. Science-based, evidence-based reporting, and then accountability for St. Paul
Yes,
Police. Thank you.
that part.
Thank you, and I want to let people know that the report that was generated, this is a PowerPoint from that report. The report is 87 pages long. It is available on our website now. This PowerPoint and videos related to it will be available later. And so you can access those things on a link now. Want to just point out again that this is the community. These are volunteers. These are people who made this happen. It wasn't the system. It wasn't the prosecutors. It wasn't any part, the Attorney General's office or anything. This was the community that made this happen. And that's an extremely important concept because every family isn't fortunate enough to have people spend 8 years fighting for them. But let me tell you something. St. Paul is going to release a statement, and it's going to say something along the lines of, we don't admit to any liability, we don't admit to doing anything wrong, and blah, 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 blah. But I don't believe that you give a family $1.3 million and think that nothing happened.
Yes, so
They
be
knew
clear.
that their officers were subject to being prosecuted in civil court for murder. They knew it. They were scared of it. They hired their own attorneys for those two officers because they didn't even want to take the responsibility for covering for those officers themselves. They claimed a conflict of interest. But you don't hand over in St. Paul $1.3 million to a family and say, well, we didn't really do anything wrong. We're just trying to get them to go away. That is not go away money. Just going to tell you now, that is not go away money. What we like to do now is make our attorneys and the members of the Reinvestigation Workgroup available for any questions you may have. Do you have questions?
I just wanted to know, well, first of all, thank you very much to the community, to the Reinvestigation Group. I was also wondering, are you, the mother of Justin Teagan has walked in, so I was actually gonna ask, have you reached out with her regarding that case to get all of that exposed?
Oh, yes.
And then also, how does one get involved within the community to participate in justice against killing officers?
Thank you for asking those two questions. I've known Tashira since pretty much as soon as Justin Teagan was killed. And we've known her for forever, since 2009. And I've worked with his mother as well. We are reinvestigating that case. It's difficult because the police continue to withhold evidence. You know, the new trick is, it's not just, we're going to write a phony narrative and we're going to write a phony report and we're just going to bury this in 594 pages. The new trick is we're not even going to give you the report. We're not going to give you the videos that other people have. We're not going to give you that evidence, even though we are entitled to it under the Data Practices Act. And we have to constantly litigate those things, go to court and to get those things out. And so we are doing those measures. And to your second question of how people get involved, we are an all-volunteer organization except for our lawyer, and we meet every Saturday at 1:30, and we invite people to come and get involved, and not just come to our meetings, but get involved in our work groups, because we do all our work through those work groups. We're an organization that's in our 23rd year as an all-volunteer organization, and only in this last year did we ever hire our first employee. So that's a long time. But we've built an infrastructure, a powerful infrastructure, that allows for the kinds of work that we do now. And people, we're driven by people power. So we need people to come and get involved with us. And so we would love to have you. And that's to everybody in this room, we would love to have you. Thank you. So are there any other questions? Yes. Well, we're going to have a bunch of speakers, but yeah, you can come on. Come on. No, honey, you're the mom. You're the mom. You're supposed to speak, man. You're supposed to speak. You go ahead on.
Hello, everyone. I am Erica Colors Golden, and I am the mother of Marcus Golden. And thank you all for being here. I know many of you probably have never seen me, don't recognize me, because I've been pretty much in the shadows. I've been thrown into this deep, dark hole, not by choice. Because I am Marcus's mother, and with my affiliation with the St. Paul Police Department, I had no choice. It's been very, very difficult for me. I don't think anybody else can say they've been thrown into this type of situation. And I've been with the city of St. Paul for decades. And I don't like this situation at all. My son was a beautiful son. He was a good son. He was loved by everyone. He was no thug. He was a good son, person, human being. He had everything to live for. He should be here today, living the best life he could live. He should be here for my birthday tomorrow, but he won't be. My son was murdered. There's so many things about this situation. Many of you don't know that I parked in that same parking lot because I worked out of that building. Decades ago, when I was pregnant with his older brother, and then for him to be taken away in that same parking lot. And then my association with the police department. I've done so much for the city of St. Paul. And I still do in another aspect. I gave hundreds upon hundreds of hours to the city of St. Paul. Even doing crime scene protection. I've been involved with the police department since the 80s. And it's been very hard for me to sit here and listen to all this documentation, listen to the truth coming out. It's very hard for me. That's why I've been in the shadows. Deep down inside, I'm shattered. I'm a shattered person. So many people see me as a strong human being. But deep down inside, you will never put me back together again. Because my son is not here with me, with all the people that love him. All because of these lies, these selfish acts. I will never forget, so therefore I will never forgive. Never. My days are dark without my son being here. I just want everybody to know how much he was loved and what a good individual he was. And it has just hurt me even more to sit here and listen to these chain of events that I really did not know about. In a way, I chose not to here because it's just too much to bear. I don't like being thrown into this situation. But I'm here today so that people do know who I am. I've done very little. I'm sorry, I can't help it. But I'm so grateful for my sister who has taken over. If it wasn't for her, you wouldn't be here today. If it wasn't for the lawyers, Rochelle Gross and her organization, I thank you all. I'm just gonna lump everybody into everyone because I'm not sure who it all involves, but I thank everyone. And today would not be today if it wasn't for everyone and what they've done. And I appreciate everyone who has come in support of Marcus and the truth. The truth. Thank you so much, everyone. But please walk away from here knowing the truth. And what a good son Marcus Golden was. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A perfect example why I do not believe in community engagement with the police. The police will take information about you and use it against you, which is what they did because they knew her oldest son had committed suicide, and they used it against her. That's what the police do. So when people start talking about, and let them not say after today, we want to restore community trust. There are people who have never had trust in the police. There's nothing to restore. It was never established in the first place.
Yes.
Particularly, we're talking about people of color and poor communities. So we need to be clear about this and who the police are. People teach their children, you get lost, find an officer, find someone with a badge. Okay, when they get old enough, they know their number, tell them don't talk to the police. Teach your children who they are and how they will use you. St. Paul Police is a disgrace, despicable for someone like my sister who has volunteered and given so much. They just called her on her cell phone when they murdered her son. She knew the police chief, Chief Smith, you're trash. Retired, left, went to Florida. And I'm sure all of these officers thought after that 3-year mark they were home free. But they're not.
That's right.
They are not. This is not over. I feel like I'm just getting started after 8 years. We've got a lot of work to do still. I also want to acknowledge Marcus's other family that's here. Marcus's sister and niece and uncle and brother are also here with us. So thank you. They're not my family by blood, but by love, so they are my family. When I talk about my family, I'm talking about the father's side and my sister's side. His father was not able to be here, something came up. But I'm sure I speak for the whole family, both sides. We do appreciate each and every one of you and what you've done. We've gotten off program a little bit, but that's okay. Michelle's gonna get us back on track.
It's okay. Thank you. I do want to just say this. The families that are in here who lost loved ones, you know, on January 14th, 2015, the Golden and Colors Doty, the family of Marcus Golden, joined a club that no one wants to be a member of. And this is a club of people who deserve our support, who need our assistance, and that's why we do the work that we do. And so we, you know, again, these families need us, and that's why we're here, because they have joined a club that no one wants to be a member of. And that's really important. I do want to mention also that Erica and Marcus's grandmother received separate settlements for the treatment that they received, the outrageously bad treatment that they received at the hands of the St. Paul police, who were busy trying to shore up their version of non-reality by harassing these families, by seizing, Erica and putting her in a psych ward, even though she had no psychological issues. In fact, the doctors there said, "Why are you here?" And then seizing control of Marcus's grandmother's house and holding it for hours while they sought a search warrant and then staged his room. So these are outrageous conducts, and those family members have received a separate settlement above and beyond the murder of Marcus Golden. And so I think that's important to point out as well. And again, St. Paul is not known for handing out money, not like Minneapolis. So as far as I've been able to tell, looking back, the $1.3 million is about the largest wrongful death settlement that I've seen in St. Paul in many years. This is not a normal amount of money that they just give you to go away. So we know that they know that their officers were about to, have something happen to them in court, and they were very worried about it. And they pushed hard to get a settlement across the finish line because they were nervous. So we know this.
Michelle, are the two cops still there? I forgot.
Yes, they are.
They're still there.
Dover, Spike, and Peck are still working St. Paul police officers.
And a question for the attorneys, can I be reminded, because that went to a grand jury, does that close the case criminally, or could an attorney general or someone else take a fresh look at the allegations that you guys
Here.
have covered here?
The only way it could be relooked at is on a federal level, and I know the family wants to submit this to the Federal Civil Rights Bureau of the federal government, because they can come in once the city didn't act. They refuse to act usually until they decide what the city decides to do. Now that they get presented with this evidence, they're hoping that they'll take a fresh look at it and perhaps bring federal charges.
And I would just ask for sort of some comments, I don't know who directed directly to, but, as the mayor says in his statement, Golden, this tragedy unfolded kind of, before body cameras, those would come afterwards. St. Paul would stop investigating their own deadly encounters and turn it over to BCA. There seems to have been some advancements in, taking a better look at deadly police encounters. Did Marcus Golden's case kind of set that on its course for St. Paul, do you believe?
It was the very last case that St. Paul police investigated themselves. It was the very last case. So we do think that happened. At the same time, we're not satisfied with simply having these cases turned over to the BCA, because they're just as much of a cover-up agency as the police departments themselves. We are seeking we have a bill at the legislature seeking the creation of an independent body to investigate these cases outside of any police department and outside of the BCA or any other law enforcement agency. So this, it is the last time that St. Paul investigated themselves in a deadly force incident, but it's not enough.
And I can tell you from experience around the country, when you have police officers investigating police officers, I don't care if you call it the BCA, I don't care if you call it the Illinois, the state police, or you call it the Minnesota State Police, or you have some other division or bureau, the investigations always seem to go the same way.
Right.
And they defer to the police officers. When you see some of the questioning that went on in this that wasn't presented here, they literally handed them the words to say. So it wasn't like, what happened? They said, am I correct that when you approached the vehicle, you feared for your life? Yes. And you
Leading
thought
questions.
that the vehicle was driving towards you and going to kill you, right? Right. And they're leading them all those questions so that they answer the appropriate way. It's not like getting a statement out of them. And so when police question police, they're really protecting their own. And throughout the country on these major cases that you're seeing, 9 times out of 10, probably 9.5 out of 10, the internal investigation said they did nothing wrong. It's commonplace because they flood these groups with police people on them anyway, which is why an independent body needs to be set up.
Absolutely.
I wanna
Thank you.
clarify
Other questions?
I do want to clarify something from that question. It was after the homicide of Phil Quinn, a Native man, and it was Black Lives Matter St. Paul with myself, Trey Hernan, Rashad Anthony Turner, who I saw here earlier. It was after that when we posted a Black Crashed Ice event to disrupt Crashed Ice. And the negotiation to stop that event was that St. Paul would no longer conduct internal investigations. So it was really after Phil Quinn, Native Lives Matter.
Thank you. Okay, so are there any further questions for these folks? Because at this point now, we're going to have some community members also, speak. And I'm sorry, I think I see a hand back there. Yes?
Yeah, I had a question that I think was mentioned by Marcus's aunt about how the operator on the 911 call was not necessarily the most experienced operator at the time and had not necessarily gone to the proper training as a 911 operator. And how they asked certain questions about a gun box and so on and so forth. Was that part of the whole tragedy of the situation exacerbated by the 911 operator, or was that not necessarily as big of an issue as it sounded in the
I can actually speak to some of
That
that.
kind of makes sense.
So there's the original recording when she's asking questions, where would the gun be,
Yeah.
blah, 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 which really didn't make sense. But because it was re-recorded, and what was important of that also was like to say like, oh, there is a gun. I don't know why anyone with common sense would keep asking where a gun was when somebody's inside a building. This person's in SUV with tinted windows, and the person also did not say, oh, Marcus is known to carry a gun. The person did not say that either. So I don't know what the operator's training was. All I know, she got an order of protection, and I don't know that we received any information about her. But I'm glad you're saying that, because this is something that really needs to be looked into. Also, the officers, scanner chatter, their recording, that's different. That's not what happened at the time either. They literally re-recorded the event from both sides.
And I want to mention another issue that comes up in a lot of these police wrongful death cases, and that's the issue of alarmist dispatchers. This is an issue that's being examined in a lot of places around the country, because one thing that happens is that dispatchers either have poor treatment or they just are alarmists by nature, and they will sort of almost manufacture things. This is actually what happened in the Travis Jordan case, where they kept, the dispatcher's like, well, does he have a gun? Does he own a gun? Well, he might have thought about buying one once upon a time, but he never did. And then, that turned into, from the dispatcher, he's got a gun. So this is the kind of thing that also contributes to these deadly force incidents, when we have alarmist dispatchers that cannot relay the actual truth of what's being said. So this is yet another issue.
I just want to respond to that quickly too. Remember that dispatch is the gateway to almost all, not all, but majority of police interactions. And if you've ever had any police training, I was a Minneapolis Police Explorer for 5.5 years. I was in their youth program. And you're taught to rely on what dispatch tells you. And the second that you hear a gun, it is going to raise your alert level, your anxiety level, and your stress as a police officer. And there are studies that show when police officers have heightened anxiety and heightened stress, that they are more likely to use deadly force.
Thank you. So at this point, we're going to have some community members that have been very involved in this case from the very beginning come up and speak. And my very first speaker is going to be Traherne Cruz, who is founder and head of Black Lives Matter.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce Traherne Cruz, because he is literally my day one. He was with the St. Paul NAACP when Marcus was killed. He was their media person, and he set up a press conference that happened, I believe, at noon on the day Marcus was killed. And my family was so glad. And also with the president, what his name just slipped. Jeff Martin. They held a press conference, which Traherne could talk more about. But since then, we organized with Black Lives Matter St. Paul, which became Black Lives Matter Minnesota, and literally an amazing organizer. He is the lead organizer for Black Lives Matter Minnesota. He runs circles around me. He just does so much. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you. Anytime I want to get in the street, anything I ask, he's like, okay, let's go, let's do it. So Traherne Cruz.
And I couldn't do the work I do without Monique and everybody up here, standing here, and many of the people in the crowd today. This case set a lot of new precedents from the beginning, and going back, I think, to what Mr. Bloom was asking about how the investigations before this the NAACP had a mediated agreement with the city of St. Paul when it came to officer-involved shootings or police murder or terror, and those agreements will be handled behind closed doors. But once we held that press conference in the March, that broke that agreement, and everything has been, any police-involved shooting in the city of St. Paul has been very public ever since. And that's because our community made it that way. Also, the story, I'm born and raised here in St. Paul, so I knew people who were being killed by the police. You know, there were a lot of people who were killed by the police before Marcus Golden, but there was never a march. There was never a rally. There was never civil disobedience. Somebody would just get killed, and sometimes we wouldn't even know about it for years, right? I remember when Demetrius Hill was killed. There was no march. There was no rally. There was nothing. And that mother had to just deal with that by herself. And that changed after Marcus Golden was murdered by the St. Paul Police Department, because Monique Collers-Doty stepped up for anybody who was killed by the St. Paul Police Department, whether they were black, white, Puerto Rican, or Asian. When Marcus was murdered, I woke up, I say around 6 o'clock that morning, and I looked and I heard the story. And I just want to, before I go on, I just want to honor Erica. And I know this doesn't bring Marcus back, but I think it's going to start moving towards some small semblance of police accountability in this situation. But when Marcus was first murdered, the first report, there was no mention of a gun. There was no talk of he had a weapon or anything. But then by 2 p.m., all of a sudden, there was reports that Marcus had a gun. So that's how the story started to evolve in the St. Paul Police Department. And I won't say the media is still this way, but at that time, stories would take on a life of their own. And as we see today, that those stories were not true. So now that we're working on, the city of St. Paul has passed a reparations ordinance. One part that we're dealing with today is restitution, I would say compensation. But the first part, there's 5 principles to reparations. And the first one is cessation and assurances and guarantees of non-repetition. Non-repetition, but the St. Paul Police Department, since Marcus was killed, has continued repetition. After Marcus was killed, Phil Quinn was killed. After Phil Quinn was killed, Cordell Handy was killed. After Cordell Handy was killed, Fumi Lee was killed. Geno Smith was killed.
Many more.
Billy Hughes was killed. Phil Quinn was killed. Jofford Smith was killed. So that's repetition. So what we just want to start right now. Cordell Handy was killed. So we want to start implementing the 5 principles of reparations now in the city of St. Paul. And we can start with cessation, which means stop killing us, socially, politically, and economically. So that's all I got to say. I'm really happy for all the work that Monique has done, for all the work that CUAPB has done, and for our independent media, like Demetrius Pendleton, Georgia Fort, and other people, Unicorn Riot, who come out and take time to get the truth and don't rock. Brixton Hughes, who's right here today, and who do not rock with the police narrative. So thank you all for coming out, and let's continue to hold up the family of Marcus Golden, Monique, and Erica. Thank you.
Is he here? He's not here. Are we sure? I don't know. Rashad, I'm not sure if Rashad Anthony Turner is still here. Okay, maybe he did leave. He was here. He was the founder of Black Lives Matter St. Paul, and he started that chapter after Marcus was killed because he knows Erica, he knows Marcus's brother, and it really helped us to keep Marcus's name out in the street and help build the movement. And our first event was Black Fair, which we had 2,000 people out banging on the gates of the State Fair, an amazing protest. So Rashad, you're not here, but I thank you for that. Okay, King Demetrius Pendleton, right here. Usually he's behind the camera. Usually he's behind the camera, but I literally, like, I drag him around like an accessory. He's like everywhere. I need to be, he's like, oh, what do you want? So, but he's always there, right? Whether we're setting up a memorial where Marcus was killed, he is always there, shows up early. He always says if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. Something. I don't know. I just, you know me. In one ear, out the other. I'm there when I'm there, trying. So King Demetrius, such an instrumental part of the movement. We met actually at an event that was Black Rail, and he talked about his daughter killed by a drunk driver and the injustice there. Said, "Do you want to talk about it?" We've been like in these streets, rocking ever since. He is an ethical journalist, telling the truth, and just being at any event, no matter how small, going out the street, he said, here's what's happening in your neck of the hood. He's really telling the stories that are happening, lending an ear to families, and just showing up regardless of the size of the crowd and using his platform that he's built wonderfully. So King Demetrius Pendleton.
First, I would like to give my deepest condolences to the family. This was a very gut-wrenching press conference, just so we're clear. Whenever we think about law, we're thinking about staying in the courtroom and looking at all the facts that's been laid out. If nobody's seen the facts today, I don't know what you was looking at. I also want to give a moment of silence to Lafayette, Monique's father. May his soul rest in peace. I also want to ask Melvin Mayor Carter to please do the right thing and clear Marcus Golding's name.
That's right. That's right.
A man stated in the 60s, the media is the most powerful entity on the earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power. Media has the power to influence minds, ideas, behavior, and attitudes of the masses. Marcus Golding was an amazing individual, was an amazing human being. Some say he would give the shirt off his back. He did not deserve to get gunned down in a car on false accusations. He did not deserve for the media to trash his name. I find it tomfoolery for media to come out with these flapdoodle accusations. Prime example, Pioneer Press, Mara H. Godfrey indicated in the transcript, the 911 phone call, his ex-girlfriend, former boyfriend stated he has a gun. For you to make a statement like that about a black man is totally dangerous and is gaslighting at its finest. Some of the media in the police department figured that Monique Cullis Doty and her family would just go away after he had killed Marcus Golding. But they were sadly wrong. Me and Monique and other journalists and media has paved the concrete. I stand on the shoulders of all these beautiful people behind me. I stand on the shoulders of Dr. Nakima Levy Armstrong, who has told me, King Demetrius, your spot is never going anywhere. When I challenged myself to go back to school after 28 years to get my degree. In the report also, a police officer indicated Golding dropped his hands in a way made him feel that he was reaching for a gun. How flapdoodle is that? Independent media is very important. I would like to thank all the media that's been out here, boots on the ground, grassroots organizations, Unicorn Riot, Black CNN, Listen Media, CUAPD, who has been doing their thing, and that's not a CUAPB. I mean, to bring this case together in the way CUAPB put this case together, they deserve an Oscar. Because there's some lawyers out here can't even do a good job like this. This is an amazing job. I also like to thank Bristol Hughes, who comes out here for CDDFP Productions, Black Press, Georgia Ford, and all the independent media. On-site media as well, with our brother Tucson Morris. I would just like to thank you all, because this would have not happened without positive people like you all. We're not going anywhere. We're here, and we are going to make our presence being known by any means necessary.
Thank you so much, King Demetrius. And now we're going to call up Jonathan McClellan with Minnesota Justice Coalition. He is very involved in legislative efforts and efforts to expand the statute of limitations for wrongful deaths at the hands of police and other important measures. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan McClellan. I'm president of the Minnesota Justice Coalition. We are part of a collective of organizations that work with families and community to draft and advance legislation and other policy initiatives at the state capitol here in St. Paul and in Washington, D.C. First off, I want to give my sincerest condolences to Marcus Golden's family. Marcus Golden was killed by a St. Paul police early on Wednesday, January 14, 2015, at the young age of 24, over 8 years ago. A common thread heard throughout all the families who have lost a loved one is the system has played games with time, the evidence, and snuffing out justice to cover up the murders of people in our community by state-sanctioned violence. We have to remember that the cover-up is always worse than the crime. It's one thing to be guilty of doing something wrong. It's another issue to be a deceiver, trying to hide the truth from the public in favor of protecting a system that has brutalized, hunted, and killed. In the case of Marcus Golden, this is what happened.
Listen.
The Anna Marcus Monique Collis-Doty knew something was not right when the initial report came out about her nephew's death. Monique was quoted as saying, "It's really a classic example of how the police will demonize their victims and create a whole new scenario to try to protect the thin blue line and their officers." Over the past 8 years, Monique has fought tirelessly to bring justice for her family, meeting brute force with soul force, and to the name of Marcus Golden, and has helped countless others seeking justice. As Marcus's mother, Erica, said, she wanted people to remember him as a good-hearted, caring, and loving human being. Those words are as true today as they were 8 years ago. We have personally witnessed the consumption and pain a young man's death has on families wanting answers. And the fight never ends, while families are left picking up the pieces and trying to glue these very pieces of their lives together in hope that one day justice will be done. It has been over 8 years since we lost Marcus. We will continue to change the system, and justice will flow like a never-ending stream to all the communities affected by a broken system that has failed and terrorized our communities with no accountability, no transparency, and no justice. Monique was quoted saying, "It's really about helping people rise above the trauma and really to be able to maneuver and survive in a new way of life, knowing that their loved one is not forgotten, that there is a community of people that is able and willing to support them and help them." People like Monique Collis-Doty and countless others, through their lived reality, have given our state and country a roadmap to create policy that embodies transparency, accountability, and justice. Although there is no silver bullet for this evil, justice for Marcus Golden is a step in the right direction. To our leaders and allies, do the right thing. Do not shrink in this moment as we look to you in this next session to usher in reform that promotes transparency, accountability, and justice. To all the pundits out there, this is not a moment, it's a movement. And to the supporters of change out there, activate and infect the system with a conscience. Rest in peace to all those who have made the ultimate sacrifice and the families who shouldn't have to shoulder that burden. Justice is on the horizon for the fallen, and we shall never forget, we will never give up, and change is coming. It's important to note that in 2022, we requested a patterns and practices investigation into the St. Paul Police, similar to that of Minneapolis. We have had multiple meetings with the Justice Department, and we are still waiting on a response.
Thank you, Jonathan. And now I introduce to you Toussaint Morrison with On-Site Media. He has been a stalwart of making sure that our stories are told in creative and important ways. You know, it's important to have media coverage, but it's also important to do a deeper dive, and that's what Toussaint has been about. He's also been a leader of protests and creative activities that bring light to these families. So Toussaint?
On-site public media.
On-site public media. I thought that's what I said. Sorry, my bad.
It's okay. It's okay. To Marcus Golden's mother, my heart goes out to you. And there are no words. There's no way to pick up all the shattered, broken pieces and put them back together. And for your son, Jafford Smith, there's no way to put the pieces back together. Justice is Marcus Golden still being here.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was just about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we were in this exact same room.
Yes.
Me, Monique, Tashira, I think a few other folks. And it was a press conference being held regarding the city council writing a blank check for 2 lawyers to defend Dover, Spike, and Peck.
That's right.
I want to ask right now, is there anybody in this room that's from the St. Paul City Council? Is the mayor of St. Paul in this room? My challenge to those elected officials and Melvin Carter is to not run. Mayor Fry of Minneapolis will show up to the grandstand, the bandstand, his own press conferences, but he will never look a family member in the eye.
That's right.
Mayor Melvin Carter, you're not here to look anybody in the eye. I hope that your apology is as big as the disrespect, if not more. To the city council writing out blank checks and you know you have the money, I hope that your apologies are as big as the disrespect, if not more. For you to write out blank checks to defend killer cops that told lies upon lies, had more people tell lies for them, had people underneath them telling lies for them, and had you telling lies for them, the blood is on your hands too. And I hope for the media, NPR, WCCO, Star Tribune, Pioneer Press, everyone else that was up there, I hope that you write out an apology that was as big as the disrespect to Marcus Golden's name. I once wrote that if they can't take your body, they'll try and assassinate your character, and that's not true. Because once they take your body, they'll try to assassinate your character as well and sell it as the narrative. They tried to vilify Marcus Golden's name just like they did Cordell Handy Jr. They shot Marcus Golden in the back of the head just like they shot Terrence Franklin in the back of the head. They changed the story the same way they changed Isaac Aiden's story. This is not in a vacuum. This continues to happen. And why does it continue to always happen to black and brown men over and over and over again? And then there's no justice. As Michelle said, nobody pays $1.3 million to say, whoops, didn't do anything wrong, just want to put this away. They know they did something wrong. And thank you to the lawyers for taking this up. Because for your work and your craft, I understand that taking up a case over half a decade later is not easy. And taking up a case that is riddled with bad litigation, things getting rubber stamped, and riddled with lies, it is hard to navigate. I walk in the footsteps of Monique Cullors Doty, of Nikema Levy-Armstrong, of Mel Reeves, and many other black leaders. And so when I speak with intention and I speak straight to the truth. I don't parse or mince my words because there's no time for it, because we don't know when the next Billy Hughes is going to happen, the next Phil Quinn is going to happen, next Marcus Golden is going to happen. The St. Paul Police Department tased a naked man jumping out of a dumpster and sick canine dogs on him. A naked man. They will change the story the same way they did to Keenan Anderson, who they murdered with 6 taser hits in Los Angeles, and victim blame that man's name to death. So when you see his name, you say, oh well, guess he deserved it. So the second they start mentioning any black man with the gun, even if he rightfully owns it and doesn't know what's going on like a mere lock, they will perceive him as a killer or as a super predator, as some people said in the past. And so the challenge upon all of you is to create a different and better community where the press is honest, even though the police lie, where the work is true, just like all the fine people at COAPB, and the work is moving forward. The truth is being told. When you hear Marcus Golden's name, make sure that the mayor, the city council, and the most deadly police department in the state, the St. Paul Police Department, make sure that their apology is as big as the dehumanization, as big as the disrespect, and as big as the lies they told. Thank you.
Since Toussaint touched on the mayor, Melvin Carter, when Marcus was killed, the mayor was Chris Coleman. And at the a press conference where Michelle Gross had calculated that the St. Paul Police Department was the deadliest department in the state. This was a press conference that took place, I believe it was February 7th, 2015. Mayor Coleman said, I stand behind the St. Paul Police Department and every homicide, including Marcus Golden.
Dirty.
He had an opportunity to make change. The only person who tried was Daitao on the city council. He said, I want to see a pilot program for body cameras in the St. Paul Police Department, gave him a date. St. Paul said no. Mayor Chris Coleman turned his head. And after that, license to kill. He gave St. Paul Police Department a license to kill, and they continued to kill.
Doesn't he run Habitat for Humanity?
He is, yes. Minnesota Habitat for Humanity. Marcus Golden grew up in a Habitat for Humanity home that I helped build. His mother still lives in that home. How do you care about housing but not the people in the housing? I will be calling for former Mayor Chris Coleman's resignation from Habitat for Humanity. You cannot act like you care about housing but not care about the community and the people who live in them. He had an opportunity to make change. He did not care about black and brown people who are being killed by St. Paul police.
That's right.
And it is a disgrace. And there must be, the third one on here, accountability.
Yes.
That's right.
Accountability for former Mayor Chris Coleman. And I mean what I say.
That's right.
That part.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Tashira Garraway. She is the founder and head of Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence. She herself is the survivor of a family member of her fiance being killed by the St. Paul Police also in 2009, and she works to support all of the families who are dealing with the grief and suffering of losing their loved ones at the hands of the police. So we're very pleased to have her speak today. Tashira?
This is very emotional to be here today. When I was able to come forward with Justin's story, it was because of Monique Collier Doty and a woman named Kim Handy Jones and also Michelle Gross. Watching Monique stand for her nephew. Last night I was just staring at my 4-year-old nephew and I was thinking about being here today with Monique and how the love of an aunt and how I feel about my 4-year-old nephew that I was looking at last night and how Monique did not settle for those answers that the police gave her family. And that when she seen that her sister was hurting so bad and that she didn't have the strength, that Monique still had the strength to fight on behalf of her sister. And that inspired me and gave me hope for Justin. And I know that it inspires the rest of our families that are here today. Our families deserve the truth. And St. Paul Police is just as guilty as Minneapolis Police. But Minneapolis Police was exposed because of Derek Chauvin in the case of George Floyd. But I always say this, George Floyd is the face of hundreds of murders here in the state of Minnesota. And Derek Chauvin is the face of thousands of killer cops around the United States and hundreds of killer cops here in the state of Minnesota. Those officers are still on the force that killed Marcus Golden. Just like there's officers that's still on the force, and it's time that we start calling out their names. It's Joshua Lego. It's Drew Evans that's still in the BCA who covers up the murders. It's the officers that's in Jeffrey Smith and Demetrius Hill. And all of these officers that are still out there to sabotage our community. But one thing that we are grateful for, we are grateful for the people like Monique that stood up to them, that is giving the rest of our families hope. This set a precedent for the rest of our families by Monique being able to file a lawsuit against the St. Paul Police Department, gave me hope that I can file a lawsuit, hopefully on behalf of Justin, just because he was murdered unjustly, just like Marcus Golden, just like Jeffrey Smith. And for all of you media, like Meyer Godfrey, I will say their names. Their names need to be said. They need to be exposed for the hurt and the harm that they've caused our families. It's not enough that you murdered our loved ones in cold blood, but then the media comes and trashes our loved ones. Please tell the truth, media. Please do the right thing, media, because there are human beings that actually live beyond the people that they have murdered. I'm emotional right now because Marcus reminds me of my son's father. And this is re-traumatizing, watching those details of what they did little by little to cover up this murder. Yes. The whole line of lies that they went down to do this to a 24-year-old young man. My son's father was 24 years old. These are our youth that they're doing this to. And they're walking free, and they're still on the police departments, and they're going home to their family. St. Paul Police needs to be investigated, just like Minneapolis Police. They're just as guilty. Our families want answers, and the rest of the lawsuits are coming. One by one by one. The rest of the lawsuits are coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Tashira, so much. Tashira is like such a, I was helping her at first, and now she's helping me. You know, it just flipped. I was like, she just took off, and I was like, okay, so Monique, we can do this, okay? So thank you, Tashira, for all your support and help. And I don't know if we made this clear, that the murder exception that Attorney Paul Bossman used set a new precedent. It basically removed the statute of limitations in Minnesota. What Tashira had worked going to the legislation and pushing for, and Jonathan. And I remember it was necessary. The legislature could have done it, right? They did it for the Catholic Church and the people who had been molested. I remembered when that happened, and I thought, wow, if they can do it for this instant, for children who are molested, they can definitely do it for victims of police homicides, but they refused to do it. But God found another way. He found a workaround through Paul Bossman. So now Tashira, St. Paul Police needs to turn over that information. Tashira and so many others who missed that 3-year, 6-year mark, now they can file their lawsuits. So this is momentous. It's a historical moment. And because of Marcus and his loss, others can benefit, right? So we always want to make sure that we're leaving the community a better place. And Marcus has done that now. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. We just have so many people that have been so helpful to this whole, the workaround. the case of Marcus Golden, but all of the work in general around police accountability. We work in coalition with many partners, and one of the partners that we're very proud to work with is CARE Minnesota.
All right.
And I introduced the Executive Director of CARE Minnesota, Jaylani Hussein.
All right, Jaylani.
I greet you all with the greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum, and peace and blessings be upon you. So much has already been said. I want to just focus on a few things. The first one is we really do not need every single person here and everyone in this room to say the exact same thing. The elephant in the room is you do not believe us.
That's
right.
When we say we are hurt, you do not believe us.
Listen.
Say that.
When we say someone hurt our families and our community members, you do not believe us. And it's time for people to start believing us and understand that the goal of our community is to create a safe environment for everyone. That is the ultimate goal. And for these families to be re-traumatized every single day in their fight for justice is a trauma that many of you have never been able to understand and believe or even be able to comprehend. I want you to know that when the St. Paul Police Department murdered Marcus Golden, you hoped that we would just turn away. We would look away. But you did not just impact one family. You impacted all of us. And in that impact of murdering, you gave us a family that was willing to stand up for many other families. It was the worst nightmare for the city because they expected the status quo to continue. And what Monique has been doing in this movement to support all these other families is the reason why these changes that you're starting to see happening. We protested for the truth to come out, for cameras to be shared with us immediately after so that families can look at that footage. Why is it the police that decide what footage we see? Why can't we see the truth? If justice is what we're after, why can't we have all the facts with us? What are they afraid of? We protested for justice, not only for these families, but the unborn children, that we do not want them to suffer what our families are going through today. And we protest and speak loudly for accountability, something that police departments across this country do not want. There is no industry that does not want some form of accountability unless that industry is doing something evil. Accountability helps them do their job better. But those who resist accountability are those who stand with evil. And for us, as we stand here, we are collectively complicit with making evil exist in our community. Every single taxpayer and every single person who purchases items in the city of St. Paul is complicit in the murder of Marcus Golden. And you can change that complicity when you say something in defense of these families and in defense for justice and truth. There are so many people in the past summers after the murder of George Floyd that shared that they're interested in this movement. Are you really interested in this movement? Or was it a moment that you thought that only George Floyd was killed in that manner, and you forget the countless murders that happened without cameras, the countless murders that happened all across this country where no one came to defend that family from tax-paid murder? We're asking for you to just believe us. We're asking for you to understand us. And we're asking for you to give us the ability to make our communities safer for all. A threat to justice, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This past week we celebrated the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, but we do not celebrate it the correct way. We talk about King as being someone who is welcomed and loved, but in his life and his dying breath, The entire country was against him. They weaponized his own community against him. And all he called for was justice and peace and inclusivity and treating every human being with dignity that God bestowed on them. Today we celebrate this victory because it is a victory. And this victory did not come because people sat quietly in their homes or put signs on their doors as if that is activism only. So many people protested, so many people spoke loud. And now is the time for many of you who will watch this today to ask yourself, where are you in this movement? Because Marcus Golden is one of many. And if we stay silent on injustice, injustice will find you in your own closed door. No, don't think any of you, especially the white families, think that somehow this is a black issue only. Injustice from police brutality will find you in your own homes. We fight together, we liberate our communities, all of us, so that we all can live in safety. And I want to specifically just thank this family, because all of these families carry this burden. They shouldn't have to carry that burden with them, but they carry that burden and they continue to fight every single day for the chance for the truth to come out, for a chance that justice prevails, and for a chance that accountability is part of existence against police brutality. We cannot be a nation that perpetuates violence against its own members and perpetuates violence abroad. That cannot be who we are. We have to be a nation that seeks out the best in us and treats every human being, whether they are in our own cities or abroad, with the dignity that God gave them. Please believe us. And if for many of the media in here, you're incredible people, you have children at home, stop believing in the lies of police departments. Do your job. Ask the tough questions. And if they give you half answers, do not share their information. You expect a lot from us, expect even more from those institutions. Do not be complicit in the murder of our people. We expect better from you. And finally, to our beloved community, we have never stopped asking for justice, and we're not going to stop today. We seek the glimpse of this justice, 1.3 million. It's just a glimpse of justice. We need a lot more so that we don't have to pay any family. We pay them back by giving their loved ones back home safely. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for all that Claire does. You're steadily out here in the movement, you and your entire team. Next, DJ. Those of us in the movement first noticed somebody running around in a Spider-Man jacket with a hood on and a shield from the top of a metal garbage can with a fist painted on it, red, white, blue. Like, who is this? What is this? But I love it. I don't know who or what's going on here. But he turned to be an amazing activist, and during George Floyd, was just out in the street all the time, got arrested together protesting, and this is DJ, my nephew. I call him up, I'm like, go DJ, that's my DJ, go DJ. Because I love him, he's just been so supportive, and just a beautiful life force in this movement. So DJ, come on.
Thank you so much. Say his name. Say his name.
Marcus Golden.
Say his name.
Marcus Golden.
This is what happened when people keep coming out. This is what happened when people are not content with crumbs. We get victories. And we need to remember that. To everyone that says protesting doesn't work, it's about having a diverse pool of tactics. We hit them in the streets. We hit them legislation with the legislation. We hit them with the politicians. It's about hitting them from all directions. This is not a one-off, right? This isn't like a miracle. This isn't some something that just happened one time. This is something that is ongoing in our community. We need to make sure that we hold these cops accountable, because all that is happening is after they kill us, they keep creating these manifestos, these police fan fictions, and the media keeps publishing it. Misinformation is violence. And I need y'all to stop being violent to our community.
That's right.
We need to make sure that justice prevails. We need to make sure that we focus on the facts. We are still out here when people are grieving their family member. They need time to grieve, and they need time to start getting the evidence to prepare to do their lawsuit. And it's hard when you're going around talking about the thing that they did in middle school or misrepresenting information and taking it out of context. That adds stress to people's lives, and they've already lost a loved one. We need to do better. And I just want to say, when we, at protests, we say a lot, we say ACAB, A-C-A-B. We say all cops are bastards. And the reason why we say that is because, yes, the blood is on the hand of the killer cops, but the blood is also on the hand of the cover-up. Everyone who's involved, the investigators, all the way up into the sheriffs, right? Because what they're doing is they're making sure that their coworkers and that their friends are going to be safe. And that's why we say ACAB, okay? Because the whole system is rooted in white supremacy. And we need to break that up. We need to break that up by passing actual laws. Because right now, what the police aren't about protecting our neighborhood. What the police are focusing on is raiding encampments of unhoused people in the middle of winter. That's what they're doing locally. Nationally, what they're doing is they're trying to create more police officers, like we see down in Atlanta with Cop City, and them trying to deforest a predominantly black neighborhood and willing to kill protesters in order to do it. We need to make sure that we get accountability. We need to make sure that there are actual laws getting passed, okay? Because right now, the Democrats have the trifecta at the state level. And despite the fact that we've only got crumbs since George Floyd was murdered, we need to see action. Last time we were there, and they told us at the last minute in the extended session they didn't have enough Democrats to get it done. Okay, y'all got enough Democrats, get it done! Get it done! This Marcus Golden is a beam of light for all family members that are affected by police brutality. It is a shining beacon example that there is hope, that you shouldn't give up, and that we can win. And not just crumbs, we can actually win. Like Tashira said earlier, the lawsuits are coming. And y'all need to believe us, and y'all need to support us to make sure that we get these killer cops off the street and convicted. Right. Now, repeat after me. Reopen, reopen, reopen all the cases. Reopen, reopen, reopen all the cases. Reopen, reopen, reopen all the cases.
Thank you, DJ. DJ's making a lot of noise in the library, but he also works in the library, so it's actually funny. I also want you to look at the wonderful graphics that we have here today by our wonderful, amazing movement artist, Leon Wong. And can we give him a hand? Leon he just called me up. He's like, hey, you want like something for the background? And he came over here and checked it out to see what would work. This is what he came up. Always stunning work, always supporting Marcus. These, well, right there, those, Leon also did those. You know, thank you so much for your support for Marcus and the movement, sharing your talent. He's an amazing artist, and the messaging here is loud and clear. This is what we're moving forward with: this truth, justice, and accountability. You made it clear. Thank you so much, Leon, and exposing SPPD lies in the case of Marcus Golden. Thank you. It's just a huge impact, so I appreciate you so much. Next, we have Linden.
Gabaway.
Yeah, Linden Gabaway. Is it Gabaway or Gabaway?
Gabaway.
It doesn't matter. Thank you so much. So I've been organizing with Linden for a while with TCC for J, and just so dedicated to the movement. And I am very thankful for TCC for J because they literally spoil me. They're like, Monique, what do you want to do for Marcus this event? They hosted Marcus's 5th anniversary. We had a community potluck dinner, which was just amazing and wonderful. It was in solidarity with other stolen lives. And one thing I'll say, the platform for Marcus has never been selfish. Our platforms must never be selfish. We must lift others up. And that's what TCC for J does for me. So Lyndon, thank you for speaking on behalf of TCC for J.
All right, I'm going to keep this brief. Everyone stole every single line I had. So I'm glad we are a together movement. This is a victory, but it came at a terrible price of the murder of the cold, calculated murder of a promising young man who was well loved and well respected. We've been proud to support this struggle and all the struggles. We are proud to gather in the streets and block traffic. And we rally on Marcus's birthday in June, and on his anniversaries in January, and in August, when it's 90 degrees, to go for the state fair, because Marcus loved the fair, and we love disrupting the fair, and we love disrupting the complacency that the fairgoers have while they're stomping on the bones of people who have been killed by the St. Paul Police Department. We're really glad that we are able to be just a part of disrupting business as usual, because business as usual is no good. We are glad that some of those cozy and soft ears got bothered by some of those more creative chants, bacon, and we believe that this is a time for disruption. This is a time for outrage, and it should be directed at the police and the system that carries out this murder. I'm just going to close real quick with. We know this is going to inspire a lot of families to take action to get justice. We hope that it also inspires other cities and towns to fight for community control of the police, to stop these murders from happening in the first place. But mostly we take this moment to thank Monique, the Colors Doty's family, the Golden family, and the movement here in the Twin Cities and nationwide for pressuring St. Paul into this victory. Protest works. All power to the people.
Thank you, Lyndon. Nikema, do you have time before you sneak out? She is on the program. She is on the program. I caught her eye, so the program is going along, but it's necessary because we've had so many people supporting us. And Nikema Levy Armstrong, when Marcus was killed, she was the president of the Minneapolis NAACP, and she was coming across the river to support Marcus. And she said, anytime you need me, sis, I will be here. And that's what she has done. An amazing support, a strength for me, my sister in Christ. We prayed together, we organized together, and you are just a powerhouse. And I am so thankful to be even in your presence.
Yeah. Girl. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be quick. You guys have heard it all. Very thoughtful analyses from the people who have spoken already, passion and commitment, and people who live, breathe, eat, and sleep this fight for justice. So I'll just say briefly, I recall in January of 2015, after Marcus was killed, we actually did a silent protest at the governor's MLK event that was right down the street. And that was at the time when Governor Dayton was the governor. We held a silent protest to let the folks know the work of Dr. King isn't over. There are people still being slain unnecessarily in the street by those who are supposed to protect and serve. After we left that event, we marched through the streets of St. Paul and stood right in front of the police precinct that's near Target
here in St. Paul. And we protested outside of that particular precinct. I think it's the Western District precinct, because so much brutality has happened out of that precinct, which is a part of the St. Paul Police Department. So I echo the calls for accountability. We know that the family, CUAPB, their lawyers fought tirelessly to get this semblance of justice through this financial settlement. That's laudable. That took a lot of hard work, negotiating all kinds of things behind the scenes, and unwavering faith by Monique Cullors Doty. Yes. No matter what was going on, she continued to have faith and to persevere. And I remember even when she got involved in the movement, she went from her day job to just being a general on the front lines fighting for justice. And that strength, that faith is what has helped to carry us forward and mobilize people. But I want to make sure we know that St. Paul Police needs to be held accountable. Yes. Period, point blank. It doesn't matter. It's great that that there's a black mayor here who grew up in this community. But that is not enough when it comes to ensuring police accountability. There are too many killer cops still on the force of the St. Paul Police Department, too many vicious anti-black police dogs that have bitten chunks of flesh out of black people, and we still haven't seen accountability. Why are the cops who were involved in the lies, the cover-ups, the murder of Marcus Golden still allowed to be a law enforcement officer? Right. Something is wrong with that picture. Why are the tax dollars of the residents of St. Paul being used to fund murder? Right. It's unacceptable. So at this point, people have talked about the BCA. They've talked about the St. Paul Police Department. I'm urging Governor Walz to get involved in the Department of Human Rights and to undertake an investigation of the St. Paul Police Department, just as we have seen with Minneapolis. We need that kind of critical analysis of the various incidences that have happened. And we need for the St. Paul Police to be under a consent decree as well. It's long overdue. The people of this community have suffered long enough. They've been bringing these issues for many, many years. I mean, as a matter of fact, I got my start doing this work in St. Paul, working with Nathaniel Kalik, who was running the St. Paul NAACP. And we were meeting with Mayor Chris Coleman back then to bring up the abuse at the hands of the St. Paul Police Department. That was in 05, 06, 07, that we've been having this same conversation. So it's time for things to change. I also add to the call that Chris Coleman should not be running Habitat for Humanity. That's just the bottom line. There should be a person of color in that position who cares about the people who need and want a Habitat for Humanity home. It should not be that these older white male mayors of St. Paul and Minneapolis are able to do harm, able to neglect the community, able to allow police violence, and then go on to get these cushy jobs. That's right? I'm thinking about Chris Coleman, and I'm thinking about R.T. Ryback, who runs the Minneapolis Foundation, who was also responsible for allowing the Minneapolis police to get out of control. That's right. So who is making these decisions? Why are we allowing the people who have done harm to continue to be comfortable while our community is still suffering? It's unacceptable. It's long overdue for change, and we need to keep showing up until we see the change that we want to see. My condolences to Erica. This should not be your reality. You are a beautiful, strong, amazing black woman, and you deserve to have your sons here with you. I know their spirits are here with you. I know that they are proud of you. They love you. They are grateful that you continue to persevere, and you know that you are not alone. You have an entire community that is standing in solidarity with you, and that will refuse to forget the memory and the legacy of your sons. So that's also what today is about. So my heart goes out to you, and I'm personally grateful for you, as well as, of course, your sister. I mean, who fought tooth and nail, day in and day out, refused to believe the lies, taking on anybody at any level of government to keep Marcus's name and the truth alive. So it's an honor to stand here in solidarity with your family, with your sister, and with those who are doing the heavy lifting in the fight for justice. Let's keep going, but Chris Coleman gotta go, and those cops who killed Marcus gotta go.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So actually, our room reservation is up. I see some people are looking in the room. So Tom Mosley, I definitely want to acknowledge you. This is Take a Knee Nation. John Thompson, former representative, always doing good work. I want to also let you know that Marcus's sister, uncle, and brother are also here. This is Dakota, that's my nephew. It's that side of the family, but that's my family too. It's my nephew Dakota, my nephew, my niece Tay, Corey. Okay, not my uncle, Marcus's uncle, but family nonetheless. I also want to thank Paul Bossman, Kevin O'Connor for coming in, Kevin O'Connor for stepping up and getting involved. I know when you joined the lawsuit, St. Paul Attorney Office, I know they were shaking in their boots when you joined on. I know you were, both of you, amazing. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all of the media who came out, those who came to learn, all my activist family, I love you. We're family. Like, we did this together. To my friend Jennifer, my grade school, high school friend who came here to support. Thank you, Jennifer. You know, that's love. Matilda, Ann Smith, Jafford, Smith's mother, here in solidarity. I saw Taryn Vang.
Cindy and Mark Sundberg.
Sunbergs, where? Where are they?
Cindy and Mark Sundberg.
Oh, thank you so much. Tekle's parents are here. Tekle Sunberg, killed by Minneapolis police. Thank you so much. Taryn Vang. Wait, I have the mask with his name on. What, Taryn, what's your?
Taryn Vang.
Travis Jordan. I have the mask. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming out, standing in solidarity. Soren was here earlier.
Right here, right
Where?
there.
Oh, love you, Soren. Thank you for standing up, for coming out. So to everyone, the media, independent, whatever, we know when we know better, we do better. Now we know better about Marcus. Let's make sure we hold people accountable to do better. Thank you all for the 8-year fight with me. We've crossed a benchmark, right? But we still have a way to go. And we can't go forward and leave our other, where's Tashira, other folks. Jafford Smith already has a lawsuit coming down the pipeline. Kim Handy Jones with Cordell Handy, she's next on deck for a lawsuit. Hopefully we'll be in here doing the same thing with her. So this is a day of accountability. Thank you all for coming out. You're amazing. We did this together. Marcus Golden, I love you.
Right.
I'd like to close that up too, but I saw people looking in. I'm like, oh, the reservation's over. Thank you. Sorry,